Hi, souls who refuse to quit. Welcome to English Story School. Part 1. The question that changes everything. What would you do if one day death itself sat beside you and said, "I'm not here to take you. I'm here to teach you"? Would you run? Would you scream? Or would you listen? Most of us would never even dare to imagine such a thing. But for one boy named Ethan, this impossible moment became his reality. Ethan was not the kind of boy who looked like he had a grand destiny. He wasn't the star athlete. He wasn't the straight-A student. He wasn't the kid everyone admired. No, he was quiet, withdrawn, a little broken in ways most people never noticed. His classmates walked past him as if he were invisible. Teachers praised him when he turned in work, but no one looked closer to see the exhaustion in his eyes. His world felt heavy, suffocating, like every breath was borrowed air he didn't deserve to take. But here's the truth no one tells you. It's often the most ordinary people who stumble into the most extraordinary stories. It all began on a stormy night. The kind of night where the rain didn't just fall, it attacked, hammering windows and swallowing the streets. The wind howled like a chorus of angry ghosts. Ethan sat in his small bedroom, staring at the ceiling, feeling the storm outside echo the chaos inside his chest. He was only 14, but he already felt decades old. Loneliness was his constant companion. His father had left years ago. His mother worked double shifts just to keep food on the table. And Ethan? He lived in the silence between arguments, in the shadows of empty promises. Nights like this one, he felt the world pressing down on him like a weight he couldn't carry. He whispered to himself, not really expecting an answer, more like throwing words into the void. What's the point of living if everything ends anyway? What's the point of fighting if death is the finish line? That's when it happened. At first, he thought it was thunder rolling across the sky, but the sound was too close, too deliberate. It was a voice, calm, steady, almost terrifying in its certainty. You want answers? Then walk with me. Ethan's heart slammed against his ribs. He sat up, eyes darting around the room. His lamp flickered. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the walls. For a second, he thought he had finally snapped. Maybe he was dreaming. Maybe he was losing his mind. But then he saw it. In the corner of his room, sitting as casually as if it had always belonged there, was a figure. Not cloaked in skeleton bones or dripping in horror, no. Death didn't look like the monster from Ethan's nightmares. Instead, it looked like a weary traveler. Worn clothes, skin etched with the lines of endless journeys, and eyes, deep, endless eyes, that carried every goodbye ever spoken. Ethan's mouth went dry. He wanted to scream, to bolt, but his body wouldn't move. It was like every instinct was frozen between terror and curiosity. He finally managed to choke out, Who are you?" The figure tilted its head, almost amused. "You already know. I am what people fear. I am what no one escapes. But I didn't come for you tonight. I came because you called." Ethan shook his head violently. "I didn't call you," he protested. But even as he said it, he remembered the words he had whispered. The desperate question, the ache in his chest when he asked what the point of living was. Death leaned forward, voice low and steady. "Every question is a door. You open one, and here I am." The boy wanted to deny it, to laugh, to tell himself this was just a dream. But there was something in the figure's presence, something undeniable. His fear began to twist into something unexpected. Wonder. "Why me?" Ethan whispered. The figure's lips curved into the faintest smile. Because you dared to ask. Most people run from me their entire lives. But you face me in words. That makes you braver than you think. Ethan swallowed hard. Brave? Him? No one had ever called him that before. He had always thought of himself as weak, fragile, a shadow. But here sat death itself, telling him otherwise. The figure rose slowly, and though it did not tower over him, its presence filled the room with a strange weight, not crushing but commanding. If you want answers, you must walk with me. I will not take you. Not yet. But I will show you why life matters, even in the face of me. Ethan's instincts screamed at him to refuse, to bury himself under blankets, to wait until morning, to pretend none of this happened. But somewhere deep inside, he knew that this was the moment. This was the crossroads. His heart pounded, his palms sweated, his whole body shook, yet he heard himself whisper, "Okay." And just like that, the air shifted. The shadows in his room stretched further, bending, twisting, opening into something he couldn't explain. It wasn't a door, but it wasn't nothing either. It was a passage, an invitation. The figure extended its hand. Ethan hesitated, then slowly reached out. Their hands met, cold, but not cruel, and in that moment, a shiver ran through him, not just from fear, but from the undeniable truth that his life had just changed forever. He didn't know if this was madness, a dream, or destiny, but he knew one thing for sure. That night wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Sometimes the questions we fear most are the very ones that set us free. Part 2. Conversations with the Inevitable. The boy sat across from death. Not a skeleton with a scythe, not a cloaked phantom dragging chains. No, death looked like a traveler who had walked across centuries, a figure weathered but timeless, carrying both sorrow and serenity in every line of their face. The firelight in Ethan's room flickered against those eyes, eyes that held every goodbye ever spoken, every silent tear shed at gravesides, every last breath whispered into the world. Ethan's hands trembled in his lap. Fear clung to him, but curiosity tugged harder. There was something magnetic, undeniable about this presence. His throat felt tight, but he managed to speak. Why me?" Death leaned back, folding its hands as though the question had been asked 1,000 times before. A faint smile tugged at its lips, not cruel, not mocking, but knowing. Because you asked the question most people run from. You wanted to know the meaning of life, so I came. The words struck Ethan like a chord vibrating inside his chest. He wanted to believe it was coincidence, that this was just a dream, yet everything about this moment felt heavier, sharper, too vivid to dismiss. That night was not the last. From then on, Ethan and Death spoke almost daily. Not in the daylight where people bustled about pretending they were immortal, but in the quiet hours of night when the world slowed down and honesty became possible. Ethan would sit on his bed, heart still nervous but no longer paralyzed, while Death lingered in the corner or by the window, its form sometimes shifting, a shadow, a reflection, a silent listener. At first, Ethan asked timid questions about pain, about loss, about the people who had vanished from his life, leaving empty chairs at the dinner table and unspoken words echoing in his chest. And Death didn't mock him, didn't terrify him. Instead, Death listened, patiently, carefully, as though every question mattered, no matter how small, no matter how broken. One night, when the rain tapped against the glass like impatient fingers, Ethan finally dared to ask, "Why does everyone fear you so much?" Death's eyes softened, carrying the weight of centuries. "Because they misunderstand me. They see me as an enemy, a thief, a destroyer. But what they forget is this: I am the reason moments matter. Without me, sunsets are just colors smeared across the sky. With me, they become miracles. Without me, a hug is just skin against skin. With me, it's a treasure you wish could last forever. I don't steal meaning from life, Ethan. I give it." The words hit him like lightning, burning through his doubts. Ethan's chest tightened as he thought of all the sunsets he had ignored, all the laughter he had brushed off, all the moments he let slip by as if they were endless. For the first time, he realized he wasn't sitting across from his enemy. He was sitting across from his greatest teacher. Death was not there to frighten him. Death was there to awaken him. "Then what is the point of it all?" Ethan whispered. His voice cracked, raw with the weight of his confusion. "If we're all going to leave one day, why build anything? Why love anyone? Why try at all?" Death leaned forward, its presence filling the room with gravity. "Because endings do not erase beginnings. Because fragility does not cancel beauty. The flower is no less breathtaking because it wilts. The song is no less powerful because it ends. Life is not about permanence, Ethan. It is about presence. When you stop fearing the end, you start cherishing the journey." Those words carved themselves into Ethan's heart. He sat there in silence, tears threatening at the corners of his eyes. He had always thought of life as cruel, as temporary, as meaningless. But what if the very thing he hated about life, its fragility, was what made it valuable? That night, he lay awake long after death had faded into the shadows. His mind replayed the words again and again. "Without me, sunsets are just colors. With me, they become miracles." The thought unsettled him, yet it also lit a fire inside him. A strange mixture of fear and gratitude. For the first time, he began to notice the small things. The way the rain smelled against the earth. The way his mother's tired smile still carried love. The way silence could feel like peace instead of punishment. Their conversations deepened. Death spoke of time. How people waste it as though we're infinite, scrolling, complaining, drifting until suddenly they realize it's gone. People live as if they are immortal, Ethan, Death said one evening, voice firm but not unkind. They speak of tomorrow as though it's promised. But promises are fragile. That's why every now matters. Ethan swallowed hard. He thought of all the days he had thrown away, lying in bed, wishing for something else, waiting for his life to start. He thought of how many moments he had wasted staring at the ceiling instead of stepping into the world. One evening, under a pale sliver of moonlight, Ethan asked, "So you're not here to scare me?" Death chuckled softly, not a cruel laugh, but one that carried both sorrow and wisdom. "Fear has its place. It can wake people up. But no, Ethan, I am not here to haunt you. I am here to remind you. Every heartbeat is a gift you only get once. I don't want you to bow to me. I want you to live before you meet me." Those words shook Ethan to his core. For the first time in his life, he felt something stirring in him. Not just survival, but hunger. Hunger to see, to touch, to love, to build, to exist fully. And in that hunger, something remarkable happened. Ethan began to realize he wasn't befriending death. He was learning how to truly live. Part 3, the shift inside. Weeks slipped into months, and something inside Ethan began to bloom. At first, it was subtle, a lighter step, a softer smile, a sense of quiet strength where there used to be shadows. But soon it was undeniable. He laughed louder, with a sound that didn't carry the weight of despair anymore. He hugged tighter, as if he finally understood how rare and fragile those moments really were. And he woke up each day not with dread, but with fire in his chest, as if the sun itself had poured into his veins. The people around him noticed. His teachers raised eyebrows at his sudden participation, the spark in his eyes when he answered questions or encouraged classmates. His friends whispered among themselves, wondering what had changed the boy who once sat in silence, detached from everything. Even his mother, weary from years of watching her son drift, could not ignore the transformation. One morning, while Ethan was humming in the kitchen, pouring milk into his cereal like it was a sacred ritual, she paused. "What happened to you?" she asked softly, eyes narrowing in both suspicion and awe. Ethan looked up, spoon in hand, and smiled. It wasn't forced, wasn't shallow. It was real, glowing from somewhere deep within. But how could he explain that his greatest teacher was the very thing everyone spent their lives running from? How could he confess that the wisdom reshaping his world came from nightly conversations with death itself? He didn't try to explain. Some truths weren't meant to be believed. Some truths were meant to be lived. So instead, he only smiled, and that smile was answer enough. Because in his mind, death's words still echoed. Every choice you make writes your story. So live in a way that when I finally come for you, you don't whisper, "Please wait." You whisper, "Thank you for the time I had." That single line had become Ethan's compass. It guided his every step, every decision, every breath. He stopped drowning in fear of failure. He stopped caring about the judgment of others. He stopped waiting for the perfect tomorrow and started building a powerful today. One afternoon at school, when his classmates hesitated to volunteer for a presentation, Ethan raised his hand. He wasn't the best speaker, and his palms still sweated when all eyes turned to him. But he remembered Death's voice. Fear is not your enemy. Regret is. So he stood tall, spoke his truth, and when he stumbled over his words, he laughed instead of crumbling. That day, he realized something profound. The moment you stop trying to be flawless, you finally start being free. Another day, a friend asked him to join a charity event, helping at shelter. The old Ethan would have refused, too lost in his own misery to think about others. But now he went. He served food, shared conversations, and for the first time in a long time, he saw gratitude in strangers' eyes. Later, as he walked home under the stars, he whispered, This is living." And death, appearing beside him in the form of a shadow, walking quietly, answered, "Life isn't about how much you keep. It's about how much you give. The heart grows not when it's protected, but when it's shared." Those words etched into Ethan's soul. He began seeking moments instead of things. He wrote letters to people he cared about. He sat with his mother in the evenings, asking her about her childhood, soaking up every detail like a thirsty sponge. He played soccer with friends and didn't care if he won, because the laughter mattered more than the score. He even stood up for a boy who was being bullied, shocking everyone, including himself. Each of these choices stitched together a new version of Ethan. One night, as he lay awake staring at the ceiling, he whispered into the quiet, "I finally get it." Death appeared, as always, listening without judgment. Ethan turned to the shadow and said, "It's not about the years we get, is it? It's about the life we put into those years." Death's lips curled into the faintest smile, as if proud of its student. "Exactly. And now you understand why I came to you. Not to scare you, Ethan, but to awaken you. To remind you that the clock is ticking, but that is not a curse. It is your greatest gift, because it forces you to live." The words carried through him like a current, electrifying his soul. The next morning, Ethan woke up before dawn. He opened his window and felt the chill of the morning air brush his face. For the first time in his life, he didn't see another ordinary sunrise. He saw fire. He saw promise. He saw a masterpiece painted across the sky that existed only for this single morning, never to be repeated. And he whispered to himself, This is what living feels like." He wasn't afraid anymore. He wasn't waiting anymore. He was alive. Fully, wildly, unapologetically alive. And though no one around him could quite explain the transformation, Ethan knew the truth. He had learned it from the one teacher no one else dared to sit with. The teacher who was feared, misunderstood, and avoided, yet who gave him the greatest gift of all, life itself. Part 4. The Test of Truth. But here's the thing. Lessons mean nothing without tests. And life, with its sharp edges and silent storms, never fails to test those who claim to have changed. Ethan thought he had grasped life's meaning, thought he had rebuilt himself from the ashes of despair. But one day, that belief was pushed to its breaking point. It happened with Liam, his closest friend, the boy who had stood by him in classrooms, who had shared jokes at lunch tables, who had once been the only person to notice when Ethan was invisible. Now it was Liam who was fading, his shoulders heavy, his laughter gone. Ethan saw it instantly, the same hollow look he once carried, the same quiet surrender in his eyes. And it terrified him because he knew that darkness too well. Liam had stopped showing up to soccer practice. He drifted through school like a ghost, sitting in the back, staring at nothing. His voice was dull, his smile gone. And when Ethan asked what was wrong, Liam shrugged it off. But Ethan recognized the mask because he had worn it himself. One evening, Ethan found him alone on the old swings at the park, head bowed, fists clenched. The air was heavy, the sky painted with bruised colors of twilight. Ethan's heart pounded, but he walked forward because he knew this was the test. This was the moment where everything death had taught him would either come alive or collapse. "Liam," Ethan said quietly, sitting down on the swing beside him. "Talk to me." Liam didn't look up. His voice was raw. "What's the point, Ethan? Nothing changes. Nothing matters. I'm just tired." And in that instant, Ethan felt the sharp stab of recognition. He had whispered those same words once on that stormy night when he asked the universe if life had any meaning. And death had answered. Now, it was his turn to answer. He leaned closer, his voice steady but filled with fire. "I don't know how many days we get, Liam. None of us do. But I know this. Wasting them in despair is the only way to truly die before your time. You're here. right now. That means there's still a chance. If you can't live for yourself today, then live for me. Just until you can. Liam's shoulders shook. His eyes brimmed with tears, the dam finally breaking. For the first time in weeks, he let someone in. He let Ethan in. And in that moment, Ethan realized something extraordinary. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He wasn't just learning. He was teaching, passing on the very wisdom that had once dragged him out of the abyss. He wasn't repeating death's lessons word for word. He was living them, shaping them into lifelines for someone else. That night, under the weight of silence and stars, Ethan saved a friend. But more than that, he discovered his own transformation. He had become what he never thought possible, a light for others. Later, as he walked home, death appeared beside him, silent as always. Ethan didn't flinch anymore. Instead, he asked, "Did I do it right?" Death looked at him with those ancient eyes, carrying the weight of every ending. "You did more than right. You understood. Life's greatest lesson isn't about escaping me. It's about becoming a reason someone else chooses to stay." Ethan nodded, his chest tight with both relief and awe, because the truth was clear now. Be the reason someone chooses life one more day. And Ethan had. He was no longer the boy who befriended death just to learn how to live. He was the boy who used that friendship to pull others back from the edge. And in that realization came a spark even brighter than before. The understanding that meaning isn't something you wait for. It's something you create. And sometimes the way you create it is by sitting beside someone in their darkest night, refusing to let them be alone. That was the test. And Ethan had passed. Part 5. The Boy Who Learned to Live. Years later, Ethan grew into a man remembered not for the trophies he collected, not for the titles attached to his name, and not even for the money he made. He was remembered for something far rarer, for how he made people feel when they were around him. Some men leave behind legacies of wealth, some of power, but Ethan's legacy was carved into hearts, not stone. At his core, he was still that boy who once sat trembling in the dark, whispering questions into the storm. He was still the boy who met death on a night when hope felt like smoke in his chest. But now, years later, his life was living proof of a truth so few dare to face. Befriending death doesn't mean embracing endings. It means embracing beginnings. Ethan had learned to see the finish line not as a threat, but as a compass pointing him back toward the present. That shift changed everything. He poured himself into life like a man on borrowed time, not rushing to outrun the clock, but slowing down to savor every tick of it. And people noticed. He became the kind of man who remembered birthdays no one else did. The kind of man who stopped to listen, really listen, when someone's voice cracked under the weight of their own silence. He was the man who offered hugs that felt like home, who laughed with the kind of fire that made others laugh too. His old friend Liam often told people, "Ethan saved my life once." Not just by words, but by showing me every single day that it's worth staying to see what tomorrow brings. When people asked Ethan his secret, he never gave a long explanation. His answer was simple, sharp, unforgettable. I stopped waiting for life to be long, and I started making it deep. And that truth lit sparks in the hearts of everyone who heard it. Because here's the thing. Too many people measure life in years, in milestones, in achievements stacked like bricks. But Ethan measured it in depth. He measured it in how fully he loved, how fiercely he lived, how unapologetically he showed up. He taught by example. When he worked with passion, not just for paychecks. When he rested with gratitude, not guilt. When he spoke, his words carried weight because they weren't hollow, they were lived. And when he faced hardship, because yes, even Ethan had them, he faced it with the strength of someone who knew that every storm had an end, and that survival wasn't about avoiding the rain, but learning to dance in it. And that's the spark for you, too. Don't wait for tomorrow. Don't fear the end. Use the end as your reminder to live today, fully, fiercely, unapologetically. Don't hold back your laughter until you're successful. Don't save your kindness for when it's convenient. Don't wait for life to line up perfectly before you start living. Because here's the brutal, beautiful truth: perfection never comes. But life is happening right now, in this very moment. Ethan lived by a simple mantra that became his heartbeat. The days we waste waiting for life to start are the very days life is offering itself to us. And the people around him, his family, his friends, even strangers who cross his path for only minutes, carried pieces of his spark long after he was gone. Years later, when his name was spoken, no one said, "Ethan was rich," or "Ethan was important." They said, "Ethan made me feel seen," or "Ethan reminded me to live." And isn't that the point? Isn't that what legacy really is? Not what you leave behind in your bank account, but what you leave behind in the hearts of others. So now I ask you, what about you? What will you be remembered for? Will people recall how busy you were, how tired, how distracted? Or will they remember the spark in your eyes, the warmth in your smile, the way your presence made life feel a little lighter? Because when your final day comes, and it will for all of us, the goal isn't to have more time. The goal is to have no regrets. The goal is to reach that finish line and whisper not "please wait," but "thank you." Ethan never feared the end again, because he knew the truth death had shown him years ago. The fear of death ends when the joy of living begins. So let me ask you again, with the same fire that once burned in a lonely boy's chest, what would you do if death itself became your teacher? Would you run? Would you hide? Or would you listen? Because Ethan listened, and he didn't just survive, he learned how to live. And maybe, just maybe, so can you. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.